Hello and welcome to an episode of Atomic Vinyl Reviews. And today, I'm kind of gonna do a video summing up my thoughts about the upcoming Godzilla King of the Monsters, due to be released in cinemas on the 30th of May this year. So that's really soon. I'm super hyped about it, and I wanted to uh, say some of the things I think are going to be good about the film, some of the things I'm thinking going to be a bit bad, and I'm not really looking forward to. And then I'm going to compile a little list of a few things that I'm hoping this film will have in it or do, etc. So let's start off. Um, just got a little list written here that I'm going to reference in this video, so pardon me as I look down at my phone from time to time. The first thing that I think is going to be a good point in this film is that it looks to be very different from Godzilla 2014, tonally and in the story and the dynamic of what's going on in the film, etc. For those of you who've been following my stuff for a while, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of 2014. I think it had great elements in it, but I think the overall execution of the film and the direction they ended up going in really tanked the whole thing for me at the, unfortunately. I did go in very optimistic to that film, and I have, mixed feelings that I really want to do a full video on at some point. And that, would definitely be a very interesting video that I should do in the near future, considering this film is a direct sequel to that. So yeah, that's my first sort of good thing. Is I've had sort of news article things titled stuff like the King of the Monsters is everything 2014 wasn't, which is great. First good thing. The next good thing that I think is going to come out of this film is the toys and the action figures that are going to come out. I'm already super hyped for the NECA figures that are coming out and the Monster Arts figures. I've already got a bunch of those on pre-order because, you can see I'm a little addicted back here. I need my Godzilla figures. They're looking awesome for the most part. There've been some cheaper ones coming out that have actually been really hard to get here in Australia, and for some people in the US as well. Because there are that Jack specific stuff that's coming out, or has been coming out for a while. People have been posting and stuff like that. I've been really wanting to get my hands on, but it's been kind of hard to. But when NECA and Monster Arts finally release their stuff, it's gonna be great. I'm super excited for that stuff and anything that'll come out in the future as well. So that's all awesome. That's the big benefit of having any new Godzilla film, is all the merchandise and cool things like that. I'm also super excited for all the posters that are going to be around. Just a great thing is just seeing Godzilla posters out on the street is really cool and really fantastic. Like I could cut now and just show a couple of pictures of Godzilla posters that I've seen around in Brisbane, Australia here recently, and it's just super awesome to see again. And we're going to be seeing more for Godzilla vs. Kong as well. But yeah, just to actually see something like a Rodan poster in a, just a random cinema, or King Ghidorah and Godzilla on a giant banner, that's so cool. So great thing about the film is all the advertising and stuff like that. Um, what else? Again, the sequels that we're getting, at least the one sequel, Godzilla vs. Kong, that's another super thing about this film that I'm loving. The fact that we actually get to see some of our classic monsters, some of the classic Toho lineup besides Godzilla, get some recognition in the Western world, is really cool. To see Rodan and King Ghidorah and Mafra, though I have reservations about Mafra's design, which I'll get into later. But yeah, just to see those creatures brought to life again on the silver screen in a Hollywood production is so cool. And as much as I actually would prefer that we get a film from Toho, more, you know, that's sort of where I most love Godzilla, and you know, but just to have that variation and just to see it in a new way is so awesome. And my sort of thing that I think is going to be one of the best things about this movie is Rodan. Just from the design alone and everything we've seen in the trailer, I'm just totally on board the Rodan bandwagon, if that's a thing. What else have we got? The size and the scope of this film is like one of the last things I've written down. Um, this film looks sort of monumental and chaotic, and it looks apocalyptic, which I'm absolutely loving. Um, it it's something that is going to be really awesome to see on the big screen. I can tell already. Uh, it's I don't know. We'll see what it's like when the final film comes out. But I'm super excited to see something of this scope done with these characters. Um, what else? I'm probably gonna think of a bunch more good things. These are just things I sort of jotted down in the past couple of minutes. Um, I could expand on them. Like, for example, the human element of this film, I think, is definitely going to be a bit more interesting than the 2014 film. Who knows? But that's probably going to be more my hoping for section. So we'll get to that soon. Let's go into the things that I'm not too happy about, that I think are a little bit bad about this film, just going in, just based on the trailers alone and all of that. The first one is, I think the color grading in this film is a bit overdone. For those of you who don't know, color grading refers to, in filmmaking, when they tint different shots different colors, you know, have, for example, if what you're seeing now is like a very sort of neutral, sort of white tinted color grade for my YouTube video, but if I tinted the video, for example, in an amber color, or made everything like green, like in the Matrix or something like that, that's color grading basically. And in my favorite sort of color grading is when it's used minimally, if not at all, to make the scenes look as natural as possible. For example, Jurassic Park has a very natural look to the film. It looks very realistic, and that's what brings out a lot of the realism in those dinosaurs. Even though that film is, made back in, what was it, the 80s or something like that. That film looks very realistic because of that. But these days, a lot of films use very saturated color grading. They try and do it for, artistic effects. And don't get me wrong, I actually like very colorful films. I think, for example, a lot of Guillermo del Toro's work is really awesome, and he uses a lot of color in his stuff, but he doesn't necessarily use a lot of color grading, where you sort of tint the whole picture. He sort of has lots of colorful elements in his film that are filmed, and different sort of lighting effects, actual sort of practical lighting that's tinted. And that, I think, is really cool, to add different sort of surreal and artistic effects to a film. But when you're just tinting the whole picture, it comes across as a bit cheap and cheesy and a bit lazy, and I don't really like the look of it, especially in something that's as CGI heavy as this film is going to be. To add an extra layer of sort of unnaturalness, as looking at the trailers at least, everything either looks sort of very orangey or very blue, and we get the same, like, we can tell that this was done intentionally, because, looking at the marketing, the posters, for example, they're all very monochromatic. Each one has its own color for the different monsters. We got blue for Godzilla, we got blue for Mafra, we got red for Rodan, and yellow for King Ghidorah, orange for King Ghidorah. And, whether it was done intentionally or not, I'm not a big fan of it. I can see what they were kind of trying to do, because, trying to get, like, this vibe, this feeling of the film, and, like, having these sort of icy walls where King Ghidorah is frozen in the trailer, for example, and all that being very blue, as well as the undersea stuff with Godzilla. It makes sense, but I feel like they could have done the lighting a bit differently, stuff like that. And, the apocalyptic scenes where, there's just storms and stuff like that is all very orangey. The night scenes are very blue. Looking at the trailers, you can make these scenes a lot more visually appealing by using more natural colors, mixing it in a bit more, in a more sophisticated way. And yeah, that's just a pet peeve of mine with a lot of films, is color grading and the overuse of it. Next thing we got going for the bad stuff is I'm not a fan of Mothra's redesign here. If you've seen my sort of analysis of when they released the monster designs for the Monster Arts figures for this film, I spent a great deal of time complaining about Mafra, and more so than any of the other monsters here, because I think, for example, just to give my sort of brief ranking of the kaiju and my opinions on them, I think Godzilla, I'm a big fan of the updates they did to the design, but I was never a big fan of the 2014 design itself. Basically, to sum up with very little detail, I like the 2014 design as a monster design. And when I say the 2014 design, I just mean the Legendary Pictures design, but specifically the 2014 design I like a lot less than the one we're getting in this film. So I think it's a thumbs up that they really improved the design as much as they did. They made it so much more interesting. The spines look so much better, especially, and the feet, big improvement on that. Loving that. But I was never a fan of basically how reptilian they made him and the facial features, and I'm actually going to do a full video sort of discussing that, and I'm probably going to do another video sort of discussing what type of creature Godzilla probably is, if that makes sense, if he were a real creature. And, those videos actually kind of be linked in a weird way. But basically, the way that Godzilla has always been to me has always been ambiguous as to his sort of type of creature. It's never been really reptilian in my mind, actually. And it's a very westernized design to the point where it looks more generic kaiju that's inspired by Godzilla than Godzilla itself. And, I know a lot of people love the design, and granted, like I said, I think it's a great monster design, looks really cool. But I can't see Godzilla when I look at that face. It's not, I don't see it, and it's not, and I've seen a lot of, fan art and like custom designs and things that people have done, that's been, it's not, very different looking, that I've been like, yeah, that's totally Godzilla, and really weird stuff. So it's not the fact that it's different that's making it not feel that way. I just feel the particular design doesn't really work. But we'll go through more of the designs. So Godzilla, I'm sort of about. I think they improved it, but I'm still not completely sold. But I think since we'll see more of him in the film, hopefully they did say we'll see more monsters in the film, which again, it goes back to my good points, is a good thing. But since what was I? Okay, but yeah, so he might be a bit better. But Rodan, I'm totally sold on the design. I think they did a perfect job modernizing that design, and they really got it looking awesome. So I'm super excited for Rodan. I hope they don't, there's a lot of monsters in this film. So one of the things that might be bad is they might not give enough screen time to each of the monsters, not flesh them out enough, which I'm going to be talking about in my next section a bit more. But yeah, that's sort of a little concern of mine. Is that, Rodan looking to be like my favorite kaiju in this thing just based on design alone and what we've seen in the trailers. But I feel like he might be the Baragon of GMK, if you Godzilla fans kind of know what that means. GMK, Godzilla, Mafra, King Ghidorah, giant monsters all out attack. In that film, they kind of shoved in, like, again, Mafra and King Ghidorah. They were originally going to have different monsters, but they made those monsters the stars of the film. But the one that I liked the most, the one that I thought that was the coolest monster, aside from Godzilla in that film, was actually Baragon. And they gave him so little screen time and sort of sidelined him a little bit in that plot, which I'm kind of worried might happen to Rodan, despite him looking to be my favorite one. So yeah, loving Rodan's design. King Ghidorah, I think they did a pretty cool design. Again, I think some of it's a little too westernized. They made it look too sort of stereotypical dragony in some aspects, but considering it was it is a Hollywood Western movie, We knew they were going to do this, and they could have done it a lot worse. And the result we got was actually a pretty cool looking dragon King Ghidorah design. So I think they did pretty good on that one. But yeah, now we get to Mafra, and I looking my thoughts on Mafra have actually gotten a little more positive seeing the actual trailers as opposed to just seeing her in figure form in the Monster Arts figure. I still stand on those hideous hind legs being a really bad decision, atrocious in fact. Um, but seeing her her face more clearly in the trailers, I actually really like the way they designed her face. It looks very similar to the original Mothra face, but a lot less cute. It looks a lot more like the kind of face we got in the Mothra 90s trilogy, which is pretty cool. So the face definitely looks like Mothra. I have no problem with the wings. They look a little weird, and I kind of wish, since they did go this extreme with the redesign of her in general, that they actually kept her wing patterns closer to the original, because that was a big part of sort of the trademark of Mafra, which I have no idea why they didn't. Basically, they really should have. Considering, like I said, they changed so much already that it wouldn't have seemed like they kept it too close by keeping that. It would have seemed very appropriate to have the classic sort of yellowy, orangey, black sort of pattern they had with Mafra, but who knows what it'll be like in the final film. But yeah, my main problem with those legs is, one, they're too big. They look awkward on this tiny frame of Mafra with these huge legs. I don't have as big a problem with the front legs with the big claws, actually, especially taking more time to think about it. At first it's a bit jarring, but what really and always keeps staying is those hideous hind legs, because first of all, they're not attached to the thorax. So an insect has the head, the thorax, this middle bit, and then the abdomen is the big sort of end tail bit. The legs are always on the thorax. 6 legs attached to the thorax on an insect, and some insects have those sort of warped around in different ways that they look a little weird, but Mothra has a clearly defined head, thorax, and abdomen, and her hind legs are on her abdomen, her tail bit, and they look huge and misshapen, and they just don't fit the design at all, and they look really grotesque. And Mothra is meant to be elegant. She can be sort of mean and furious, but she's, elegant in her own way. And yeah, I'm really worried about that. That's my so aside from the color grading, that's my biggest thing that I'm sort of say, okay, this is already bad. Just going in what I'm going for. And yeah, that's enough about that. We'll quickly go to what I'm hoping for, because those two things are the things that I think are clearly bad, just looking at it without having seen the film. But these are the things that could be good, could be bad, but what I'm hoping for in this film that'll do. So I'm hoping for surprises. I don't want the film to be exactly as we expect based on the trailers. I want this film to be like Shin Godzilla, in the sense that you see the trailers for Shin Godzilla and you're like, okay, I don't really know what to expect seeing this film, and you go into it and you're like, okay, I don't even know what to think, but that was so different. And then, I bloody love Shin Godzilla. I know some people don't, but I bloody love that film. It was masterfully made, and there's, pleasant surprises. It's not what you expect, and that's what a good film does, especially a well-marketed one. It doesn't give you exactly what you expect in the trailer, but it's a summer blockbuster kind of thing. Is it a summer blockbuster? It's not summer here in Australia. It's like pretty much winter. But in the I think we call summer blockbusters based on what it is in America. So it might be summer there. I don't know. I don't care. Sorry. So that's what I'm hoping for. And I don't want it to be kind of like Godzilla 2014, where it doesn't give you what you expect, because we saw the trailers for 2014. I'm like, oh my god, Bryan Cranston looks like he's gonna be fucking awesome in this thing, and it's gonna be dark and epic. And then you go in, and it's fucking Soldier Boy, plank dude, being boring as fucking shit, for the last two acts of that film. And we only get the good stuff for like the first act and then like a bit of the very end. So we don't want it to be that kind of surprise. I'm hoping for a really pleasant surprise. That's what I'm saying. I want to see some Easter eggs in this thing. Like in 2014, we got that Mafra on the little, what would you call it? A fish tank enclosure thing in the like destroyed city, said Mafra. We got that like dragon face in like sort of being in the rubble. We got a couple of other little things there, but yeah, we want some Easter eggs. We want hints at other things in the Godzilla universe, stuff that you kind of watch it multiple times and see new stuff come out in the film, like little hints at you know what Easter eggs are. Come on. What else have we got? This is probably the most important thing for me. I want a good story. Like I don't with 2014, I went into it. I didn't even care if it would just have an average sort of, yeah, that was okay, kind of a story. But you want a good story with interesting characters. I'm since 2014 just kind of really kicked itself in the ass because again I need to do that video on 2014. I'm sorry I keep referring to that film. It's just I don't know why. It's just because that film had such a good beginning and it's so much potential with how good the beginning was. They shot themselves in the fucking foot with killing Bryan Cranston's character and just the whole second act of that character, having Ken Watanabe being so underused and all of this other stuff, and refusing to show so much of the monster action. And I know there's been a lot of criticism, like every time it's like, oh, you say something like that, people reply with like, oh, you just want to see like hours of just monsters fighting each other, that won't be very good. And it's like, well, where did that and then you just think to yourself, where the hell did that response come from? I mean, anyone who's complaining about there not being enough monster action is clearly coming from a genuine place, because like obviously they don't want just solid monster action, but it's a big part of why people go to that film initially, and people subconsciously know it's harder to make a film with an interesting, compelling story and good characters that requires a very skillful writer. But the next best thing is filling out some of the boring space with some cool monster action. So that's where they come to, because they're like, well, that's the easiest way to make that film just better that I would have loved that film. I don't know. This whole issue is something that's really been um, something that I've just been kind of interested in, and gets a little on my nerves sometimes. But yeah, I really want a great story in this thing. It doesn't have to be the greatest story. It doesn't have to be like revolutionary or anything. I just want something fun. I want it like to be hopefully kind of like Rampage. For those of you guys who haven't seen Rampage, it was a kind of a modern kaiju film, came out the other year, with starring Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and that film was so much better than had any right to be, especially since it was a video game movie. For you guys who don't know, the sort of arcade game Rampage, that was what it was about. Based on, and that film had no right to be as good as it did, and it actually had a really, nothing revolutionary, but the characters were fun, interesting, and likable, and the story was compelling, and there was, emotional engagement in some of that, and I'm hoping we get some of that in this movie, whereas the characters, post Bryan Cranston's death in 2014 were a plank of wood. Let's face it, there was basically one character in that film who had no discernible qualities, no emotion, no interest to him, no nothing. So I want a character that has emotion. I don't care what emotion, just a emotion. I want there to be actual character interaction in something, because not all Godzilla films have the greatest character. and characters and stuff like that. But at least most of them have an actual goal besides just saving their wife with a blank face. Um, I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, so we want some interesting character stuff. It looks like there's going to be that. Yeah, it's Legendary Pictures, and they're not the greatest at that sort of stuff. Um, I mean, didn't they do the Dark Knight trilogy? I'm pretty sure they did. That was, helmed by, oh, what's that director's name? I don't know. Everything he does is pretty good, so that's sort of a given that that stuff will be interesting. But for the most part, their stuff, character wise, it's been kind of like, but I'm hoping we get something at least average, and not worse, because we deserve something remotely interesting to care about besides the monsters. Expanding, and so this is an expansion of what I was saying. I've got written down here, expanding Dr. Serizawa's character. This guy is literally named after one of the most iconic and important characters in cinematic history, Dr. Serizawa from the original 1954 Godzilla film. This guy deserves to have, this guy's got weight on his shoulders just based on that name alone. This guy, since he's tributed to that name. His name is Ishiro Serizawa, I think. Ishiro being the director of the original Godzilla film. So this guy's like a big tribute to all this stuff. And he's, played by Ken Watanabe, a great actor. He's got to have, you got to use that character to the best of his abilities, and I think they're gonna do that because we bloody well see him, literally in a cavern filled with magma, wearing like a suit. What is it? Like a hazmat suit, literally walking up to Godzilla. So he's doing some stuff in this film, and I'm really hoping they do expand his character. There's that sort of graphic novel that I think I've read most of it, if not all of it. Could borrow it out from the library, where they have his father's backstory and all that sort of stuff. So his character is pretty interesting, and they can really flesh him out, and I hope they do that in this film. I hope we get Mafra fairies. I know a lot of people don't want Mafra fairies because they're kind of weird, but a lot of the best things about the Godzilla universe and fandom is that there's just some weird things in it, like the Mafra fairies, like Skeleturtle from Godzilla vs. Mothra, as it happens. Like a lot of that telepathic stuff, telepathy that happened in the Heisei era, like a lot of other just weird and random things, or like a black hole gun from Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. There's a lot of weird crap that goes on in Godzilla films, and I love it. Actually, probably my favorite thing would be that like weird anti-gravity sliding kick that Godzilla does in Godzilla vs. Megalon. But yeah, I just like the weird shit that happens in Godzilla films, and something that's really tied to the Mothra mythos, and her character's always been those twin fairies. Put them in, even if it's just an Easter egg, but I would just love if they literally got like the tiny Japanese women in there as the Mothra fairies. Seeing the sort of direction this series is in, I don't know if it'll fit. I kind of think it will. I think this film's not as serious and grounded as the other boring-ass one tried to be, especially kind of seeing the humor and stuff that was in Kong Skull Island. Like, some weird shit would kind of fit in there alright, I think. Here I just got sort of a point that I brought up earlier, and it's one of my last 2 points, so I don't need my phone anymore. Give each monster enough depth, like I brought up. Don't sideline every monster. And I don't know if this movie is long enough to really make the monsters as grandiose as we'd hope, because we really don't want this film to kind of be like, for example, Justice League that came out a little while back, where they were trying to do what Marvel did and do like a universe crossover film, but not have done the full movies just about each character initially, so that when we kind of see them all together, none of them have enough presence or screen time or anything, and we don't give a shit. and it's done with, again, bad color grading and too much CGI. So we don't want that to happen. In this film, we want each monster to feel like it matters, you know? To have that impact. We don't just want them thrown in there because, oh, it's a Toho IP, and we're Legendary Pictures, and now we have access to all these monsters. Let's just chuck in Mafra and Rodan here just because we need another monster for, you know, a big monster bash. With the original way that Toho did these things, Rodan and Mafra had their own movies that came out. They were great kaiju films, and when they came together for a film like Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, or when we got Destroy All Monsters, that like those were already established characters, you know, and that gave even the ones that barely had any screen time in those films, it gave them more impact for them, you know, being there. So I really hope that, you know, especially Rodan, because I don't want him to basically come out of a volcano, terrorize some people, and then fight Ghidorah and die, which is what the trailers are kind of implying is going to happen. Like, they're not implying that he's going to die, but there is a shot where he's going to fly towards Ghidorah, and it looks like it's in the same scene area where there's a lot of that Rodan initial damage of him coming out of a volcano. So I don't want him to be killed off really fast and to have like the last battle just be Godzilla and Mothra, because you know Rodan deserves better, you know, like yeah. But this is, if you think about it, this kind of is like a remake of Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster, and if this film's anywhere near as good as that one is, I will be very, very happy. But yeah, since this video is getting pretty long, I'll just cut to my last point, which is I really, really hope we get some spin-off films from this film. So, like I said, I want a solo Rodan film above all else, but I would love to also see a Mafra one, maybe even a Ghidorah one. Maybe we could have one of him flying from planet to planet, destroying them as he did in the Showa series. His origin is probably going to be a little bit different in this one, maybe not. I would really like it if they kind of use that sort of Showa origin, because I always loved, like, for the most part, I love all incarnations of Ghidorah. I'm not really happy with the GMK one. It's actually my least favorite. He doesn't really fit a hero character, but I love the evil space dragon that flies around to planet, destroying civilizations for no apparent reason. Just I don't know. I really love that. But they did a great job in the Heisei era, giving him a new backstory, which was also really cool, um, and making him basically be from the future. These creatures are brought back in time in order and created by the same explosion that created Godzilla, but then made to fight Godzilla, and or to replace Godzilla, and that was just a really cool sort of tie-in, really cool, interesting backstory to there. Um, and I hope that this one's got a cool backstory, because it's kind of just a thing that makes Ghidorah pretty awesome. So yeah, giving all the monsters, I'm hoping it branches out into solo movies. If not to those monsters, if we get some other Toho kaiju maybe done in their own solo movie, because I don't think it all has to be tied to Godzilla. I generally love sort of all kaiju in their own sort of in their own way. They don't really have to be tied to Godzilla. It just so happens Godzilla films tend to have the best kaiju as it happens, but they could all have their own solo movies. And yeah, this video is getting a bit long, so I'm going to cut off here. I could probably talk a lot more. There's actually a lot more positives and negatives and things that I'm hoping for in this film, but these are some of the basics, some of the major ones, and the first ones that come to mind. So yeah, let me know if you agree. What are you, as well as, you know, your list of things. Like, go as in depth as you can. The film is almost out, so you're running out of time before your sort of random lists of comments can be sort of be like, well, that's not what happened, so your opinion doesn't matter anymore, kind of phase that happens after the film comes out. And then people will be like, well, you just didn't like this because it's not what you wanted. And no, people tend to complain a lot. People tend to complain a lot about people having different opinions and hopes for things. Even though that's sort of what the purpose of a fandom is to sort of love this thing, but you kind of, you still are entitled, you still have the right to have your own opinions and not to just blindly love everything that comes out of a certain IP, because you're thinking human being with your own opinions and stuff. So I don't know. A lot of people try and shut down discussion and complaining about things when I think, a little bit of complaining is kind of good sometimes. So I know I complain a lot about things, but I do it in a loving way. Anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that shit. Yeah, if you didn't like this video, dislike it. Why not? Do whatever. Just interact with the video in some way. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And yeah, peace out, guys. May all your vinyl be radiated vinyl. And don't forget to bloody well check out this film when it comes out in cinemas, because I think it's going to be fucking awesome. So yeah, peace out. Bye.